Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, my name's Rich McDonald, and I played David Mason in Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Everything Geek podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Leif Ganfert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Rory Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me is co-host Ashleigh.
Hello everyone.
And also joining us today is a very special guest. Joining us is Beth Keener, best known for playing Annie in The Walking Dead, Kathy Martinez in Battle Los Angeles, Amy in Death Sentence, Sue in The Zombie Invasion, Camille in Implanted, Carman in My Fake Fiancé, and TV reporter in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. How are you today, Beth?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much, Rory.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks. I'm very, very honored that you would have me on. I know you've interviewed some pretty cool peeps.
Yeah, we sure have, and you're very welcome. So getting right into my questions for you, Beth, for some of our listeners that may not be familiar with your background, can you tell us how you got into acting?
Sure. I think I always knew that I was going to be an actor. I'm a middle child, and I grew up on a farm, so I had a crazy imagination, and I was fortunate enough to have a teacher in my life that took me under her wing, and I had a knack for singing and performing, and I guess I never knew it would take me into TV and film at that age because, when you grow up on a farm, you're not really thinking that that's an option, right? But you know kind of what your dreams are. And so I ended up kind of getting into musical theater, and then my mom got divorced, and we actually ended up moving to a town nearby, but they had a performing arts high school. And so Mom really felt like that was somewhere I needed to be. And so from there, I graduated early from high school to go perform in an independent theater in Gatlinburg. Well, most people know Gatlinburg, Tennessee, but it was actually Pigeon Forge where Dollywood is. But I performed in an independent theater there. And that led me back to Georgia once my contract ended, and I just was finishing school. And a part of me felt like it was missing, and it was the acting bug. So I got into classes and started doing my homework, and I was fortunate enough in 2005 that's when the first film incentive came to Georgia, where they started working on a tax break for production, and then that was rewritten in 2008, and that's when the industry just took off. And so I was just fortunate enough to be at the right place at the right time.
Absolutely, because especially since The Walking Dead began production all of those years ago, the industry has really taken off in Georgia. Like, there's a lot more opportunities in Georgia than there were before.
For sure. Walking Dead, because of that tax incentive in 2008 came, and I guess it ended up being such a huge show that it really created the spotlight on Georgia, in addition to the fact that the incentive was already there, but that there was a thriving show coming right out of the South. So it was really neat, and I really think The Walking Dead helped put that framework down for what we know of as the industry here in Georgia today.
Absolutely. Can you tell us how you were cast as Annie in the show?
Yeah. What's crazy about my history with The Walking Dead is when they were casting the original pilot, I was living in LA at the time. My agent had me read for Laurie. And, of course, I was too young. At the time, I think I was 25 or 26. I believe maybe 26. So, of course, she had Carl. She was an little bit older woman. And so it didn't work out. But the casting director kept up with me. Her name is Sharon Bialy, who she's one of the coolest casting directors that exist. And when I moved back to Georgia, a couple of things came down the pike that she had me in mind for, and she had reached out to my agent. But when I had finally, the part of Annie came up, I turned it down because right before I was cast in The Walking Dead, I had stepped away from TV and film because I also do hosting. And I was really trying to be diligent about that. And we declined the audition through the casting agents here in the South. They're called the Fiancé. And then Lisa May, who was casting The Walking Dead at the time, I believe she still is, called my agent, was like, Scott Gimble wants to see Beth read for this part. And so I just rushed to put it on tape, and they booked me straight from tape. So that's kind of how my story started and how it all came to be, that I ended up on the show.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but all I can think about is that a lot of the listeners that are the Walking Dead fans are probably thinking right about now, someone actually turned down The Walking Dead at one point. That's unacceptable.
I know. I know. It's kind of like Law and Order, in New York. Everybody who's anybody in this market does the show, right, if they have the opportunity. And so that's the way it kind of worked for me. Was and maybe that's why I try to encourage other actors. Nobody can take what is yours. Nobody will ever be able to take a part that was designed to be yours. Even if you have the worst audition ever, if it's meant to be yours, like how could somebody say, no, I'm just not even going to do it, and still end up with the part? You know what I mean? So there's some peace in knowing there's a lot more at work than just everything hinging on whether or not you had a great audition or whether or not that part was supposed to be yours. So if it is, it will be.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because it's almost like, booking interviews like I do for the podcast. Like, I mean, obviously it takes a bit more work than just someone saying yes or someone saying maybe later down the line. I mean, which you know about yourself, because you also, you're a host and reporter as well as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, listeners, I actually managed to not make that about myself. Yeah, I'm not vain. But that is really interesting how you were originally cast in the show, and especially in the sense that you originally turned it down. But were you a fan of the TV show or the comics before being cast in the show?
I was. I actually was. Not the comics, but the show. I was a fan. And because it had been such a cool show coming out of the South, like I had said, we absolutely, all of us in town wanted to be on that show. That was the ultimate achievement. And so when it happened, it was crazy. And being a fan of the show, nothing was cooler than showing up and like being on set and like, yes, to some degree that was some part of like, okay, I made it. I'm a fan, but now I get to be on the show.
Yeah, that's amazing. Obviously, it's really great because The Walking Dead is so popular that now people like yourself, of course, are getting cast, having already been fans of the show. Maybe not all of them turned it down originally.
No, probably very few, because then you still talk to, your friends who are in the industry, and they're like, man, I would love to be on the show. And sometimes it's really hard to say, well, when they ask me about my experience, that I did turn it down initially. But what I also like to say is, just hang in there. And maybe when you let go of your like deep desire to be cast in the show, it'll come back to you, right? It's if you love it, let it go kind of thing. I don't know. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, that philosophy makes a lot of sense, but I mean, what goes around comes around really is what's important as well, because eventually you did end up being in the show anyway, so, that...
Right.
It's just funny how that works at the end of the day.
For sure.
What would you say were the biggest challenges you faced while working on The Walking Dead?
I think the biggest challenge for me, and what I don't think a lot of people realize, maybe they do, is that there's a lot of technical elements in filming. And for my scene in particular, when I died, there was okay, the doors are going to fly open. First goes Michonne with the sword, and then everyone out, okay, and you're going to be using this to walk, okay, so, and the zombies will be behind you, so run fast enough to be slightly ahead of them, but slow enough to where the group will lose you. And then you're going to trip here, but you're not going to fall, but that'll just give them enough distance to lose you more. And then you'll trip and you'll fall here. When you fall, you'll land this way, but you have to land the same way every time. And then you're going to shoot this zombie, and this zombie. But you've got to turn and say your line before you do those things. So there's a lot of points. And because The Walking Dead is shot on film, it's not digital. So there's not a lot of room for too many mistakes. So you really do have to be very conscious of direction, your surroundings, hitting your marks. And that was, I think, the hardest part for me of filming is just the technicality of what is involved with that kind of action.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It certainly sounds very challenging because, like, for one, you have to make sure you keep shooting the right zombies every time. You have to fall the same way every time. And, try not to actually completely fall on the first time, because as you mentioned, you had to slightly fall, but not fully fall, and then actually fully fall. So that whole sequence in itself, that one scene, does sound challenging, and that's even before Annie gets eaten alive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's very meticulous. They want it to look real, but in order to do those kinds of things safely, you have to be very particular about the way that they execute, right? Because safety was a big thing. Even falling on the pavement that many times, it doesn't look like it would be something that you would be mindful of, but it can get very exhausting and bruising and, not easy. So they really want to make sure that you're covered. But in order for continuity and all of those things to go into film, you have to be very mindful of everything, every mark that they give you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How would you describe the overall experience working with the cast and crew of the show?
Wow, great. It was just incredible. Everyone was very kind and open. I think that's why The Walking Dead is so successful. The energy there is very good and very supportive. They want everyone that shows up on the set to feel like family. And I think because of that, because there really isn't a lot of ego, everyone can do their best work. Nobody's tiptoeing around the main actors. Andy was one of the first people to come over to me and introduce himself and thank me for being there. I mean, that never happens. I've been on, close to 40 projects, and that just doesn't happen. So it was really cool. And the overall experience, it was fun. I remember thinking, driving down to Sonoya, our calls, we'd be up at 4 a.m. for a 5 a.m. call or something like that. So we'd be getting up very early. And for me, I was local. So I was driving an hour from Atlanta, because I live in the city proper, down to Sonoya. And then you'd get there and you'd play all day, and you were carrying, fake guns around, and sometimes real guns. And it was just fun. And you think that that's kind of the epitome of what you hope to do when you're an actor, is go to work and play. And when you can play, you have more fun. And so I'd say overall, I don't know if you have any specifics you want me to weigh in on, but that was really what was best, or what the best.
Yeah, that's a really great answer. I mean, it really shows how much they all enjoy their craft. Like, there's some shows where you might get people that are a bit maybe divas or just a bit full of themselves, but it just shows how much appreciation they have for their craft. And the fact that Andy was willing to introduce himself to everyone is just a testament to that, how much he cares about the craft, how much he cares about the people he's sharing scenes with. It's just really great when there's people that are like that on the production.
Yes, absolutely. And you don't get that kind of energy very often. There's a lot of stress surrounding work now. And another cool thing being on set is to watch a professional like Andrew Lincoln work, because he was all out. He was all out in rehearsals. He was all out in the shoot. He he takes his job very seriously. But in the same vein, when the camera's off or when you're on break, he's very kind and very open. Stephen Yun was the first, I go over, you get your plate. When you're not, a part of the group, you go and you kind of sit wherever. And Stephen's like, get over here, come sit with everybody. And, just really making sure that everyone felt a part of the group. And I think that kind of camaraderie is what keeps that show so elevated and so much good energy surrounding it.
Absolutely. We touched upon it a bit earlier in the interview, but I want to talk about it a bit more now. Outside of acting, you're also a host and co-founder of an entertainment show yourself called The Local Lens. Can you tell us what inspired you to become a host and reporter?
Sure. When I lived in LA, I had moved out to pursue acting. And when I got out there, I realized that there was so much about the industry and the pursuing that side of the entertainment world that really wasn't totally in my heart and soul. And so I got into some improv classes because I'm kind of a quirky person. I love to be silly. I often say really uncomfortable things to people before I can take them back. They're out of my mouth. It's hard to explain. But what I realized in that process of performing and doing improv is that I really liked being myself. I loved that candid expression of what you can come up with on your own. That is very different from exploring a character and getting into character and performing for somebody else's work. So when I moved back to Georgia, Fox Sports South hired me to be their social media reporter, but I was more of a fan interactive reporter. So I would interact with fans and do kind of the fun pieces on air. And it was my first experience with live TV as well. So it bit me. It was like, wow, I love people. I love conversations. Really, the reason that I even pursued acting was because I really do love relationships and conversing and people's stories. And hosting and reporting allows me to do that. It allows me to tap into other people while being Beth and not having to be a character. And so that's kind of how I ended up going for it, just really going for it.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's the same for me, really, with the interviews I do on the podcast. Like, I really like hearing people's stories. Doesn't matter whether they're like a main cast member on the show or, main crew member or just, someone lesser known, like an extra or something. I just love hearing stories. Like, I can never get enough of the stories. And I also totally get what you mean by when you said that. Sometimes you might offend people without meaning to. Like, I totally get that as well.
For sure. You can't please everybody, Rory, can you? You just got to do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just have to be yourself, basically.
You really do. And, when you get a little older in life, or long in the tooth, as they say, you realize that the people who are going to be in your tribe are going to be in your tribe. You can't appeal to everybody. You just got to do you.
Absolutely. That's a really good sentiment. So my final question for you, Beth, do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects that you would like to talk about?
I really, you mentioned The Local Lens. So now what is going on in my life, like actually Sunday, crazy enough, I'm doing this podcast with you today because I sat down with Norman Reedus and Greg Nicotero this past Sunday. And we kind of talked about their new restaurant. So for anyone out there who has visited Sonoya or wants to, they opened a restaurant called Nick and Norman's. The food's delicious, and we talked about that. But that particular piece is going to be in an overall pilot. And so right now The Local Lens is working toward getting a pilot put together for a show that would be based on entertainment. And it would be coming right out of the South.
That's very exciting, and that's two really great guests, of course. I'd like to interview them too at some point. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Want to help us out?
Hey, let me tell you, it's people. These guys get pulled in all sorts of directions, so it's funny how you have to really work your network to make something like that happen. And quite frankly, I was shocked that we were able to do so it just worked out. But I think it also helped I'd been on the show. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if that didn't help. I was only teasing, of course. I like to to get interviews my own way without too much help, of course.
No, man, listen, there is no shame in asking, because you don't ever get anything that you don't ask for. So you got to put it out there, right? You just got to do it.
Absolutely. That's all of my questions for you, Beth. Thanks for answering all of them, and I'll let my co-host Ashleigh ask hers now.
Okay.
All right, Beth. Awesome to hear about your experience being on The Walking Dead. And what's interesting, not only listening to you, but also previous cast members of the show, how you guys really are a family. So when you see that chemistry, it doesn't matter if it's the main cast, supporting cast, or an extra, that you guys, I mean, you're out there in the heat and the humidity in the South, which being from Florida, I totally get that, or even in the cold weather, and how you really just are a family. So I really appreciate you sharing your experiences on the show.
Sure.
So my first question for you is, what has been the most difficult scene to film throughout your acting career on any project you've worked on?
That's honestly a great question. I think what I was just talking about with that scene dying on The Walking Dead is rivaled to my scene in Vampire Diaries, where I also die. Apparently, I'm very good at that. So if you guys are ever looking to fake die, I'll give you some pointers.
Awesome.
But it was a similar situation where we were out in the woods. They had blown fog all into the woods. And I was in the tent with my boyfriend, kissing and stuff. And he goes to get something from the car. So when he leaves, I start hearing dripping. And we had this debate about it raining. So when I come out of the tent and I'm filming this scene, they're like, okay, Beth, I need you to step out of the tent. I need you to take your flashlight. I need you to go run it up and down that tree. Then you're going to turn to the left. You see that red light over in the woods. You're going to make sure your flashlight crosses the red light. And then you're going to keep going and turn around. Now, here's where the blood's going to be, but don't look at the blood. Look here. And the flashlight is going to be placed here. And then when you pull and it was all of this, like I could go on and on and on about the technical aspects of getting a scene right. And then you're also in the middle of the woods, and you're looking at your dead boyfriend with blood running out of him all over the top of the tent, and you're frightened and you're running for your life. So you have to be able to connect viscerally to that kind of fear, but then also technically execute a scene. So I would say between The Walking Dead's technical execution and then the Vampire Diaries, those were probably the two hardest scenes that I've ever had to film.
See, that's great to hear it from someone who actually has been on some big name shows, because I don't think a lot of people realize how television actors, they rely so much on these different technical features that are part of your acting job. And it's incredible to all of you TV actors and actresses for what you guys do. So major props to you.
Thanks.
Next question is, what was your reaction to being cast in The Walking Dead? I know you originally mentioned that you turned the role down, but what were your thoughts when you finally found out you were actually going to be part of the show?
Oh man, I probably peed a little. You know what I mean? Like as we all do, right? When you're just super excited, you're like, "Yep, all right, gonna have to change my drawers on this one." But it was really exciting. I had gone for a walk outside of my townhome and got, 50 paces, and I got a text message from my agent. You got the part. And of course, then I'm turning and sprinting home to go share this exciting news with my husband. And I think we were in a riff at the time, or a tiff, or I don't even know the slang for like a little argument. So then it kind of made everything better. It's like, how can you be mad when you're about to be on The Walking Dead? You know what I mean? It was perfect.
Oh, exactly. And it happened at the perfect time. You finding out you were part of the show. All right.
Okay.
What is your favorite memory from your time working on The Walking Dead?
Ooh, good question. You know who actually became pretty fond of two people because there was a lot of laughing, and the guy who plays Nicholas, Michael Trenor, have you guys interviewed him?
We were supposed to a while ago, but we had to postpone it. Like, he was available, then he had work commitments, like, you know how it is being in the industry.
For sure. Oh my goodness.
But
it's not always easy to nail people down.
Like, he was the only one who had to reschedule that actually sent me, like, an audio file of him apologizing. It was hilarious. If I ever need a laugh, I listen to it.
Nice. Yeah, he's the bomb. And then Soneqa's husband, Kenrick, who played Scott on the show, he is freaking hysterical. So I think my favorite moments were really behind the scenes, sitting in the chairs, listening to these guys talk and laugh and share stories, and it was really great. It was great. I mean, I don't even know that I could pick one moment from the show that I would say was my favorite. There were just so many. Actually, I wish I had a better answer for you.
Oh, no worries. It's just great to honestly hear that you guys really made the most of it on and off screen. And it really just shows, like I mentioned before, that chemistry that the entire cast has. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So it's wonderful to hear that you're even getting along with the husbands and everybody else, the family members of people on the actual Walking Dead. So that, in my next question, actually ties into this as well. Which has been your favorite television show or film you have worked on?
You know, I'd have to go all the way back for that one to the very first film or TV project I was booked on, which was Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon. And I was 21, you know, I had my agent for like 8 months, you know, and it was my really first big thing, and I got to be on set for a week and hang around with the cast. And in Columbia, South Carolina is where we filmed. So really learning a lot, being there, being around someone like Kevin Bacon, but then also being able to hang around and get to know these people outside of the film or the screen was really neat. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself as a young woman. I kind of worked through some nerves being on a big movie set for the first time. And then had memories that I'll never forget, like I talked Kevin into singing with a band for a party that the city of Columbia threw for the cast. So I got to sit at a table 20 feet from Kevin Bacon singing Footloose.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, right? It just was the coolest thing. And for that to have been my first experience on set, it was like no other.
Talk about memorable. That's amazing.
For sure. Yeah.
Is there a particular franchise of film or television you would eventually love to be a part of?
Ooh, franchise. You know, what's interesting is now that my goals have slightly shifted to hosting, probably franchise, if this would be proper, would be like, I'd love to be like on ABC. I'd like to be Kelly Ripa for sure, or I'd like to be on the Today Show, like as one of the lifestyle, like Hoda or Kathy Lee, but connecting with people, talking about things that make people happy, and still keeping myself in the entertainment world, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I think you'd be perfect for it. So maybe one day we'll see you on one of those programs.
Amen, sister. From your mouth to God's ears, okay?
I love it. And I have one question before I shift this interview back to Ruari is, what are some challenges you faced during your acting career or even your hosting career?
Whew, so many. So many. It's an ebb and flow consistently throughout the duration of any career, I think, creatively. But from an acting perspective, you know, you have to find things that you believe in, that you enjoy outside of pursuing your career, because it's not a career that affirms you very often, that makes you feel whole at all. So if you put all of your stock and all of your eggs in that basket, you can be disappointed ongoing, because truth be told, you just will never measure up. There's always going to be someone more talented, more beautiful. But, you know, you have to really compartmentalize your life and really have hobbies and develop and maintain really good relationships. And then you have to pursue acting like any other business. You really have to look at it from a business perspective. People who do it for the art and they you know, get off on being martyrs of art, then that's fine, but you're never going to make a career out of it. So you have to keep your cap on all the time and just handle your thinking cap, I should say, and handle disappointment with a grain of salt as much as you can, because it's really never about you. It's not, you look like somebody, you're too this, you're too that, you're not well known enough. Nowadays, speaking of hosting, you never have too many enough social media followers. So there's always going to be something. So you just got to put blinders on, put your head down, and keep moving forward, and never accept no. I mean, never accept. If this is your dream and what you want to do, be undeterred. Keep moving and believe in yourself, because you're the only person in the world who can do you, first of all, and you're the only person in the world who's going to be looking out for you. So it's up to you to take care of yourself and to not let other people tell you or make you feel what your worth is. Your worth is decided by you. So that's been what I would probably advice I would give to someone. And that, because I've been downtrodden in my career, you know, it's easy to get downtrodden when you do this.
Oh, absolutely. And it's certainly inspiring to hear such great words of wisdom from you, because you've experienced it firsthand. So you definitely can't feel for others as far as the challenges they may face, whether it be acting or any sort of career.
For sure, yes. And, you know, artists are crazy. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ashleigh.
Oh, no, continue.
Oh, no, I was saying being an artist is crazy. It's crazy, no matter what form you got, you know, you do. So you got to just believe in it, but not take yourself so seriously. Just kind of do it because you love it, and whatever happens will happen, you know.
Exactly. You just do the best job you can, and hopefully good things come your way. Patience, right?
Amen. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Beth, and I will hand things over to Ruari now.
All
and
right,
best
hey, Ruari.
in all of your future endeavors.
Thank you so much, Ashleigh.
Can I just say, before we wrap things up, like, I didn't want to say it earlier because, like, I want you two to have the conversation that you both had, of course. But I knew you were in the Vampire Diaries because I looked at the IMDb credits and saw that you were credited as girl in an episode, and I was just like, oh, she was probably an extra in that. But I didn't realize that you were actually. I mean, obviously you were just credited as girl, but I like when you start.
Isn't it? Those names they give people are terrible. They're just absolutely terrible. It's like you earned a right on the show, and they won't even give you a damn name.
I know.
At least Susie Q or something.
Yeah, because
something.
Because literally the moment you started describing that scene to Ashleigh in her question earlier, I was like, oh, I already know who she played. Like, I literally remembered the scene. It was only the second episode of the show, and it was early on in the episode.
Exactly.
But I didn't even recognize it was you. And like
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and then you started describing the scene there. Immediately, I was like, oh, there was that scene, and they only credited her as girl. Come on, the CW.
Yeah.
At least give the character who got her, you know, it was violently killed. At least give her a name, and the other the guy you were with was simply credited Guy.
Yes, I don't know why they did that. I really don't. It was such a big deal. They looked for weeks for this character, and I wasn't able to make the first round of auditions. So when they had the second round and I was available to go weeks later, you know, they went through all this trouble you could call me something, but that's the way it is. And that's the way it was in the secondary market that Georgia was. Is, you know, these smaller parts were seemingly insignificant, even though they played into the bigger picture. Now they're changing that a bit, right? Georgia has a lot more opportunity to be front and center, and for these actors that are here to be able to get better roles.
Bring some pride to the South, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, that was just crazy. That was just trippy for me the moment you just started talking about that scene, because I just immediately knew what it was, and the episode and all. But yeah, it's crazy. So that's all of our questions for you today, Beth. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
Well, thank you. I again appreciate you guys having me on and taking some time with me. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure. I wish you guys all the best with your podcast.
Thank you. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Sure, absolutely. You know, when Local Lens is up and running and it's all over, I'll check back in. How about that?
That sounds really
Sounds
great.
like a plan.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. Thanks again for joining us, and take care. Bye.
Bye.
Have a great one. Thank you.
Time to wrap up. Make sure to check out our podcast links. Check out our website, website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/EGP. Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/officialeverythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Septus Check out Ashleigh's Instagram, www.instagram.com/scuba.ash09. Check out Beth Keener's website, www.bethkeener.com, and check out channel 1138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel1138.com. Geeks out, everyone.
Geeks out.
You know, it was crazy to shoot it too. I mean, because you had to go in sections because there's so much other stuff going on, you know, around it, and you know, and just the prosthetic they had on the face, and you know, how to make it look as real as possible. And
you have to be there, man, to experience. It's amazing. Everybody they talk. They have this hashtag TWD family, and it's a family. Whether you're there for 2 days or 5 minutes or 6 seasons, you know.